Money Show.
Personal Finance with Warren Ingram.
Well, live and in person, without a jar of crunchy peanut butter though, is Warren Ingram, our personal finance expert, and of course the certified financial planner and also co-founder at Galileo Capital. Warren, it's wonderful to see you in the flesh. Good evening.
It's wonderful to be in studio. Thank you.
It's not that great. We're talking tonight about buying a property to rent out or buying a flat to rent out. Lots of people are very keen on this. It seems like a good idea. You're told to, get in the property game often. Lots of things that don't tell you. And there's always someone talking about it. And then there are also nightmare stories. Where do you start with? Is this a good investment or a bad investment?
I think it's maybe allowing, like any good investment decision, doesn't start with what you believe. It starts with what do the numbers tell me. So I would say that if you're having this kind of a conversation with yourself or with a partner and you're kind of discussing this, don't start on the basis that I know property is a great investment, or alternatively, I know it's a terrible investment. Start with, I'm doing a value, like I'm doing a number conversation. It's called investing. It must be about numbers. I do this so that I make more money than I had 5 or 10, 15 years ago. And I think a lot of the time this debate starts emotively. It starts with your parents, your grandparents, or somebody saying, don't pay off, the landlord's bond, and you should be the landlord. And, there's so much demand for property. Look how many buildings they're building around Sandton, or whatever the deal is. All of that's nice, but it doesn't get to a number. So I would say, one looks at numbers once and first and second and third and fourth, and then you start to think about all the other stuff afterwards. And I bet you most people that have got a good story did the numbers properly. Most people who've got the horror story, I'm not saying it's their own fault, but they probably didn't do the numbers like they should have. Okay.
So if, for example, you buy a flat for 1.2 million rand, you're paying a bond of over 20 years, your interest rate's 11%, your bond payment is sort of around 12.5. You would have to find a good tenant and to go from there. And that's the starting point for this conversation.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the time people don't do that sum correctly. So you kind of go, well, I know lots of people looking for a property. I'm just going to buy it and the tenant will pay my bond. No, that's not how it works. It's incredibly rare that the property market gives you the opportunity to take 100% bond. So you're borrowing the whole amount that you owe, and that you can find a tenant that will pay off that whole bond every single month from the first month. Why do I say that? Because otherwise the tenant wouldn't be a tenant. They would just buy the property themselves.
Yeah.
So the truth is that you are going to buy a property in most instances where the bond is going to be bigger than the rent that you can earn. So in the very first month, and it might well be for 3, 4, 5 years, your rent is not going to be at the rent that you're earning is not going to be at the level of your bond repayment. We haven't even got to the costs of, okay, what about all the other stuff that I've got to pay to be an owner? It's not just your bond. There's a whole lot of things that you have to pay in addition. And I think it's that very first conversation that you've got to get right on day one. Okay, fine. This bond is only 1.2. It's a nice apartment. It's close to the city, whatever. It's easy to travel. It's not that expensive. It's 1.2. Fine. That's not the conversation. What's the rent that I can earn from a property like that is close, and all of those things?
You mentioned other costs. I mean, this is often the thing, right? Is that you'll look at the bond and you'll think, well, that's the big number. That's my target. Okay, that's what I've got to do. But suddenly, and I mean, this is the thing about property, all sorts of other things start to come literally out of the woodwork.
Yeah, like the analogy. So you've got, firstly, we've got your fellow shareholder in the property, which is the tax man. So you're going to have to pay your municipality. You're going to have to pay rates. You're going to have to pay. If it's an apartment, that means it's a body corporate. So that means you're going to have to pay levies on top of the rates. Then you're going to have to pay for the insurance of the stuff inside the apartment. Not saying if you're renting it out, you're not insuring the kettle and the fridge, but you're insuring the carpets and the walls and all those kinds of things as well. So you've got insurance as well. I would suggest as well that you're setting aside money every single month from the very first day for when the place needs to be repainted or the carpets need to be redone. And you hope that that's not with a nightmare tenant that does it after the first lease. You hope that's in 5 or 10 years' time. So all of those costs are in addition to the bond that you've got to pay.
We're talking to Warren Ingram in Personal Finance tonight. Your questions for him about rental property. Does it make sense to buy a rental property and then to try and let it out? What do you need to know? What are the hidden costs? Are there any benefits? Does it work? How do the success stories actually work? Your questions for Warren. 011 883 0702 021 446 0567 and your voice note questions as well on 072 702 1702. There are other things too. I mean, you have to often pay someone to manage the property, or you have to put in the hours yourself.
Yeah. So, I mean, I love this. People say, no, I'm just going to get an agent and they'll take care of me.
Yeah.
They'll look after everything. Really. What they want is they want to get someone into that property as fast as possible, and then they want to earn their 5 or 10% a month thereafter. And if it goes wrong, what they've lost is their little bit of the rent.
Yeah.
That's all they've lost.
They don't care.
Maybe it's an opportunity for them to get someone else in again, and so they go. So unfortunately, you've got to look at this and say, if you're going to pay an agent, it's not fire and forget. You just need to know that. So you're going to pay the agent, you're going to pay the rates, you're going to pay the levies, you're going to pay the insurance, all of those things. I think you're probably in for a good few thousand, probably closer to 4,000 on top of the bond repayment.
Sure.
And I did a quick search for, in preparation for the show and looking just around this area, what would be a 1-bedroom apartment? Let's go at that 1.2 million. And I think you're going to be, pretty happy to get rent of about 8,500 a month. So you're paying out 12,500 or 12,000, whatever the number is for your interest. Let's say you get a decent interest rate. So now you're paying 12,000 on the mortgage. You're paying another, let's say 4 on all the other costs that you have to pay, and you're getting an 8.5. You're going backwards pretty quickly. So in your first year, you might well be back, underwater by about, let's say, between 80 to 90,000 rand in year one, and that's if everything's gone well. That's if the tenant's paid on time, everything's worked out. So it is a real thing to be able to say, have you done that number before you buy?
Sure. I mean, it's amazing how many costs there are, but you sort of forget that this is a property, and properties come with costs, and it takes you straight into the should you rent or should you buy debate as well.
Yeah. So maybe, I mean, I don't want to paint the picture that buy to let is always a bad idea. I don't think that's true. I think making a buying decision to any investment is, what price can I pay? Can I get a really good low price? So, for example, if new apartments are being built at 1.2 million, and you're in a close to Sandton, can you find an old apartment? Maybe you spend 100,000, and you're paying maybe 900,000, and suddenly the 8,500 rent that you're getting versus a 900,000 rand property, is that a better deal? Can you start to make the numbers work? Or is there some special situation where you find, someone that's happy to pay a much higher rent for stability or certainty or something? So there will be times when your starting price or the starting rent make it a very attractive proposition. And I think that's the thing that people don't, the sum that they don't do. So yes, understand your running costs are probably, as I say, 3,000 or 4,000 per month, more than what your bond's going to be as well. It's your bonds on top of that. But now, how can I make these numbers work? And if you can't make the numbers work, then ignore what everyone's telling you, all the armchair experts, and just go, this is a lousy investment for me for now. I'm going to park it and do something else.
Okay, there are also big risks. And the first big risk, and this happens so often, is that your flat is got no one in it for a while. So you've got the bond and you've got no money coming in.
Yeah, and either that you just don't get a tenant, or the real nightmare, you get a tenant that comes in for 3 months and then stops paying.
Yeah.
Now, in South Africa, I think it takes an average of 6 months to follow the process to get a tenant out who has stopped paying. You've got to follow. There's a very strict process that's written down in our law, and you've got to follow that process. You can't just lock them out and say, well, get some bouncer to come and bounce the tenant out. You've got to follow process.
And there's lights and water in the meantime.
Lights and water. You've got to pay the bond. You got to pay your rates, all of those things, and now you've got to pay some lawyer to go through the process of all the things you've got to do. So that's the nightmare scenario. But back to the tenants, the tenant deal. If you're in a 1-bedroom apartment, it doesn't mean that person's going to stay there for the next 10 years. They're probably going to move every 2 or 3 years themselves, and you'll be getting a turnover. So you might well be losing 1 month of rent every year. And just to work it out, that's 8%. So 8% of your income every year, if you've got turnover of property, is just being lost to an empty place. It's almost impossible to say, okay, you're out on the 31st and then you're in on the 1st.
Yeah.
The likelihood is it's empty for a month if you're lucky. And if you're very unlucky, 3, 4, 5, 6 months.
Sure. There's also concentration risk, which is about the amount of your capital, the amount of your money you're putting in one place.
Yeah, so this is the eggs in the baskets conversation. So the way I would say this is we take 1.2 million rand. We borrow, actually, we don't even take our own money. We borrow 1.2 million rand from a bank. Remember, these are not your friends, it's a bank. And I say to you, why don't we go and buy one share that only has one customer and only works in one market in one city? This is a great investment.
Yeah.
The best thing that you could possibly do. But when you do that for property, somehow people are okay with that. So the concentration risk is simply, now you're taking all the eggs you have and you're borrowing money and then you're putting them in this basket and then you hope that this basket's going to be okay. We've all lived in Joburg in a time when the property prices go down, and so that story doesn't always work out. It does work out if you're extremely lucky and you've got a place on the south coast of Natal or in the Western Cape or Hoedspruit or something, but it doesn't always work out.
Okay. We need to consider SARS. I mean, we always need to consider SARS. Death and taxes are certainties. Where does SARS come into the picture? Because this is income, and also there might be capital gains tax too.
Yeah, people, especially first-time landlords, this is the thing that catches a lot of people. So they start this and they think it's fine. It's my property. This isn't a salary. It's not. There's no PAYE. I'm fine. I don't have to pay tax on this. Unfortunately, rent is definitely taxable. It's exactly the same as if you were earning interest. It's part of the taxable income. It's going to attract income tax. So yes, you do have to pay, and you have to pay it from the very first year that you're in this deal. So don't forget that. What is nice is legitimate expenses. You can't now go and write off a whole lot of things like your new wardrobe because you had to make yourself look nice for potential tenants. Real expenses, real maintenance, those things you can write off against the tax. The tax you have to pay, and also then the interest that you're paying on the home loan. That's an expense you can write off. So there is a benefit to using SARS to help you in this deal. But remember now, it's not your property. It's a property that you're renting out. And when you sell that property one day, you're going to have to pay capital gains tax on the whole value of the entire profit. Why am I emphasizing that? When you sell your own private home, the thing you live in, you get quite a nice big gain before you have to start paying tax. It's about 3 million rands worth of profit before you actually start to pay capital gains tax. On your rental property, capital gains tax from the first cent.
Okay. Just to sort of also manage the fact that you are paying money, so you're paying a bond. If your bond and the rent come to the same, if you're just covering your costs effectively with the rent, won't all of that be deducted from the tax anyway? Would there be no tax?
No, because when you pay your mortgage, your home loan, unfortunately, it's not all, well, maybe fortunately, unfortunately, but that whole value is not just interest. So a portion of it is actually capital that you're repaying.
Right.
And so there's no benefits to that. It's only the interest portion of the repayment.
Okay. It's 12 minutes now to 8 o'clock. We have a question from Gail. Gail, hi. She says, I'm 47 years old. I have a retirement annuity I bought 12 years ago. I've been paying money into the RA every month. It's not doing well. It seems the growth has been poor. The fees are high. When I raised this with the advisor who sold me the policy, he said I must not cash it out and I would be penalized if I stopped contributing more money. He said it will come right if I just keep paying the last 8 years until I am 55. Should I keep going or should I cancel this policy? Yeah, that's a very interesting question, actually. Warren Ingram will have an answer for you, Gail, in just a moment.
The Money Show. Personal finance with Warren Ingram.
Got some voice notes for you, Warren, but first, Gail's question. I'm 47. I've got a retirement annuity. I bought it 12 years ago. I've been paying. It's not doing well. The growth is poor. The fees are high. The advisor says you have to pay. You'll be penalized if I stop contributing, and I must just pay for the last 8 years. What should Gail do, Warren? I mean, this happens often.
I can't say rude words on the show. So I'm trying
to... Yes, you can.
So let's say this, Gail, number one, I'm really sorry. Number two, what you can do is you can ask for a quote, which is called a paid up value quote. So what it'll do is, let's say your RA is worth R1 million. That's what they tell you the fund value is. If you ask them for a paid up value, what that will mean is, if I stop adding any money to this, what's the value then? And it might be a bit lower, but it gives you an idea of what the penalty will be. So that would be the first thing to do. The second thing is a Section 14 quote, which is you transfer this RA from this company to an investment platform where the fees should be much better, because I suspect this is about fees. And find out what that value is. So you might find that your RA is worth R1 million, but they're going to penalize you 100,000, which sounds like a huge amount of money, and I know it is, but it's 10%. And I feel that if you've got 8 years to age 55, and then you might carry on working to 65, what you want to do is go to a place where your fees are not 3.5% or 4% a year. They might be 1 or 2% a year. So that 10% that you might be paying as a penalty now, which I know is galling, actually you could make it up over a couple of years and then get many more years of good capital growth. So I would ask for those quotes to find out what the penalty will be and then make the decision. I feel don't be fooled by that you've only got 8 years. You've got 8 years plus. So don't get stuck by that argument.
Very quickly, shouldn't an RA always do relatively well? Why do some of them do so badly?
I mean, to give credit, sometimes it's just the market conditions are not favorable. But a lot of the time, when it's these kinds of structures where there's big upfront fees, then there's big annual fees, and it's hard to figure out what you're actually paying, it's because you're paying an enormous amount of fees.
Yeah.
So even though the actual investment's doing well, it's being dragged down and kind of ground to a halt by very high fees. That's making this advisor obviously very rich.
Sure. Okay, one or two voice note questions. Let's take the first one on 072 702 1702.
Hi, Warren and Steve. Great show. This is Kathy from Santon, and I have a question. We have a house, and we're considering selling it. We haven't built a lot of equity on it, but we think we can get not a substantial amount, but enough to put on a deposit for our next home. But our debate is, should we lease it out or wait until it gets a little bit more equity? Because in our area, we can lease for like. So the example you gave, 12,000 for 12,000, we can get that, but we would have to then pay the shortfall of the levies. So we're not sure if it's worth the hassle, or should we just sell the house, get a little bit of equity, and move to the next house with a little bit of that as a deposit? Because right now we're debating, if we don't get the exact price we're looking for, it might not be worth selling.
Yeah, Warren, I mean, this is how people end up with two properties, isn't it? Because they move on to the next one.
It's such like an intuitive thing. Well, I know the property well, I'm sure I can rent it out and everything will be fine. But back to the point we raised a bit earlier, what happens if your tenant is a nightmare tenant? And now you've bought a new place, and so now you've got to fund new bond, and you've now got a problem tenant in the one that you were banking on where to pay off some of that bond. So my view is, if you treat this as a proper business and it's not a fire and forget scenario, maybe it makes sense. But in most instances, if you don't want to become a professional property investor where you're managing buildings and you're managing tenants and you can make some profit out of the thing, sell the thing, and then put all of that into the house that you're going to live in, and then you keep that bond as low as possible. And the whole trick here is still to try and be debt-free and build capital so that it compounds for you, not to then say, well, I've still got now two sets of debt, or one and 10%. I think you want to be debt-free. That's really the power here.
Okay, so that does make sense, actually. And we've got another voice note for you as well this evening.
Hi, Stephen. This is Fred from Clayville. I just want to find out from Warren, right? I've got a property which is about 1.1 million, right? I'm almost done. There is about 6,000 rands left for me to pay it off, right? So now I want to find out from Warren Ingram, is it advisable, boss, in 2 months' time I'll be turning 60. Is it advisable for me to pay off that house and then get another property? I understand you guys are talking about buying property to lend, to rent out, or to lease, whatever the word is. So what's Warren Ingram's advice on that? Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you. Yeah, Warren?
Warren Ingram doesn't love property.
He doesn't.
So, and it's not because I'm biased. I just think you're 60 years old. You want to be building up your capital as fast as you can to when you're going to stop working, to when you hit retirement age, so you've got to be very sure of the tenants that you've got if you want to make it a property business. Otherwise, invest the money and spread your risks far and wide. Remember, it's a 1.1 million rand. Back to my one share example. It's 1.1 million in one property, in one city, in one country. I don't know. I'm not the biggest fan of doing that.
No, sure. Okay, Warren, we do need to wrap it up, and we've got a couple of minutes left. But is there a way to know when the numbers do make sense to buy, when you should go ahead?
Yeah, so I'm sorry, we never like doing jargon on this show, but there's something called the yield, the rental yield. So what you do is you take all the rent that you could earn in a year, so you take your monthly amount and you times it by 12. Then you work out what's that as a percentage of the value of the property. So it's a bit like if I put R1 million in the bank and I get 10% interest, the yield is 10%. So if I've got R1 million property, what's the rent that I'm going to earn? And that's the yield, so over a year. Now remember, the deal here is not the rent before costs, it's the rent after costs. And if that rent after costs is at least better than inflation and it's escalating, it's growing every year, you might be doing okay. But if it's 8 or 9% after costs, it's a very good buy. So for me, I'm looking at about 8% as my after costs yield. Then I would be saying to myself, this is a good property, the price is right, and I'm getting good rent. But if it's 1% or it's negative, which at the start of a property's life, that's what's going to happen, then I'm thinking very carefully before I make that decision.
So there are times when it does actually make sense.
There are, and it's almost situational. I mean, I remember in the late 1990s in Joburg, the rents were amazing relative to the price. So that was a great time to be a property buyer. Then you almost wanted to buy as much as you possibly could. But there are other times when rent is very low relative to the value of the property. And then it's a terrible time to be a property owner.
So if you own property in the Cape Town City Bowl right now, it would be a good time for you. If you had an option to do it, it would be a good time.
Well, I think you've got to do that calculation, because I'm worried that the property prices in the Cape are very high. So yes, rent is high, but how high is the rent relative to the price that you have to pay for the property? It might be that Cape Town properties have peaked. And actually maybe, I mean, I don't know, I'm not the property guy, but I'm wondering for myself, is Joburg not the property buying opportunity because our rent's not going better relative to the capital that you're going to have to pay?
Warren Ingram, thank you so much. Good to see you. Really do appreciate it. Warren Ingram is the co-founder at Galileo Capital and, of course, a certified financial planner on The Money Show.